Sorry for the ambient sounds. There's a lot going on right now. Good morning, everyone. Long time no see. Getting right into it. Hello everyone, welcome to the video. I'm so happy to be back. I love doing these Dramione videos, and I really like doing these ones that don't have a lot of spoilers. A great way to give recommendations to people. One of the things about fan fiction is it can be kind of hard to find a lot of information on a fan fiction. There's so many fan fictions. Okay, so the first video that I did of this, I talked about, I don't know, 8 or 9. It wasn't like those were the 8 or 9 most popular, or the 8 or 9 best. And it's not like these are the next, I don't know how many I'm doing, 7 or 8. It's not like these are the next most popular or the next most best. It's all preference. These are just the ones that I've read, and I have a certain, I have certain things that I like. So I'm going to tell you how much, what I thought of them, and then also just like general information about them, because obviously different people like different things, so that you can get a good idea of if it's something that you want to read or not. If you saw my first video of this, Dramione, Ultimate Guide to Dramione Part 1, you kind of know the format. But generally, I'm not going to talk about spoilers, and then I'll talk about, how many pages there are, how many chapters there are, who wrote it, some important tags, what I thought of it, some tags that I wish they would have included for each one of these, and get a good idea of if it's something that you want to read or not. So I'm going to be talking about 7 fan fictions today. They're all pretty long. In my previous Dramione video, I talked about a few that were really short, as well as some that I started but didn't finish. I finished all of these ones, and I didn't do any short ones. I have a video on one-shots that's separate. I'm not including those ones in this. So let's just get started. First, talking about Measure of a Man by In a Days 22. This was completed in 2022, 588,000 words with 42 chapters. This is from Hermione's point of view, and the redemption arc in this is that it's already happened. We don't see it happen. So this starts, what was the background? 13 years after the war. Sorry. Draco is a dad. He has a son. He's a 5-year-old son. And that's a big part of the story. It's not like he has a son and we don't know. It's a huge part of the story. His son was with Astoria, who died 6 months before the beginning of this story. Hermione gets into the picture because she's kind of a healer. Narcissa has dementia. And so she has like a comprehensive plan to help slow the progression, which includes being at her house a lot. The rating is explicit. Patronus rating, there was no Patronus, but there was something that could be used in its place, in my opinion, that was pretty good. Wizarding World of Harry Potter realness, it was fairly real. There was a lot of use of magic. There was a lot of talk about magic. Ron bashing, there was some Ron bashing. The 2 main characters, like, realness to the books, I really liked Draco. I thought that he was really realistic. How do you really know? It's 13 years later. How do we really know he's a dad? But he did seem like believable, Didn't like Hermione. Did not like Hermione in this one. That was like the main thing I didn't like about this one. I liked everything else. I actually really liked this story a lot. I liked this book a lot, but Hermione. So, yeah, this is a lot of people's absolute favorites. It's a really slow burn. Draco doesn't even come up until, he's not, it's like 100 and something pages until he even shows up. There was a lot of side characters. This is really ensemble cast. There's a lot of other characters. Just to talk a little bit about, tropes, he likes her first. Okay, he likes her first. The way that they had conversations and stuff, the way that he wanted to like learn about her, the way that he took her opinions to heart, and the discussions they had, like all of that was very, very well done. Moving on to Breath Mints / Battle Scars by Onyx and Elm. This was completed in 2020. This is from Hermione's POV. It's third person, but it could have been first. It has 149,000 words, and it was 51 chapters. The redemption arc was not really to my taste. I'm wondering if he had one. That was the kind of story it was. He fell in love with her, And he was maybe never a bad guy as far as like morals, but he's definitely like a bully and mean and bad in the sense of like he was a bad person, not necessarily like he wants, you know, all muggles to die, but he did seem like he wanted people who he didn't like to die. And in the end he did do some good things to like save his friends, but it wasn't really clear as to whether he had like actually changed or if he just was like saving his friends, which is not a change. I mean, I think Draco's always kind of been that kind of person. It wasn't my favorite in that sense. Like the like bad boy trope, this is it. I mean, he's really bad. It's very two messed up people type of story. Okay, if you like two messed up people, this is for you. This is a great example of two messed up people. The rating is explicit, and dare I say, it's a big explicit. It was quite explicit. If you've read this and you have some opinions about it, then you might want to watch my video about it. I talk a lot about my opinions about it, but there was something that I would call maybe like revenge voyeurism in this. That's putting it lightly. Revenge voyeurism is putting it very lightly. It was not to my tastes, and in my opinion, it wasn't something that was in the tags. I was not expecting it, and then also I hated it, that aspect of it, and it kind of put a bad taste as far as Draco's character in my mouth. So when I said two messed up people, if you like two messed up people, maybe this won't bother you so much, because it's just like a trauma, you know what I mean, like he's doing things badly because he's having a bad time, you know. Is it behavior that I would accept from my significant other? No. Not even, no. Once again, this is truly like some people's favorite. This is like in people's big three. Like people consider this to be one of the big three. In the tags, there is emotional / psychological abuse and consensual non-consent. It was not consensual non-consent in my opinion. It wasn't even dubious consent, which I don't even think dubious consent really exists, but so just keep that in mind. I just think it's really important to like be totally upfront about those types of things. There's no Patronus rating. It's set in Hogwarts, so it has a lot, it's pretty real as far as realness goes. It's a little bit weird that they're so like I mean, this is kind of how A tier ones are. It's like they're so traumatized and things are going so badly for them, and yet they're like going to History of Magic. So in some ways kind of funny, and in some ways kind of like, ugh. Kind of realistic in that real life just marches on, you know? This is a Ron Basher. Oh baby, this was a Ron Basher. The realness of the two main characters. I'd like to think that the real Hermione wouldn't have accepted that kind of treatment. And I'd like to think that the real Draco wouldn't put her through that. So in that sense, it was hard for me to read. If you like reading about how the war would have changed them and how the war would have affected them soon after the fact, then this might be one for you. There was also some, I mean, he's a really bad boy, so it's like, he's like a bad guy. So there is some, you know, he's into her even though he's really bad type of stuff, which is, you know, well, listen, I can get into that too. Moving on to the next one, Détraquée by Hysterical. This is a really long. This was completed in 2024, but it was being written for a very long time because it's quite long. It's 728,000 words, 108 chapters. If you read this like on a PDF or if you download the PDF or whatever, it's 2,257 pages. Redemption arc. The redemption arc was very good. He's a double agent in the war. Oh, I loved that. The background. Part 1 is 6th year. Part 2 is 7th year in the war. Part 3 is 8th year, like they go back to school. And then part 4 is the 1st year out of school. Part 5 is the 2nd year out of school. The rating is mature. Wizarding World of Harry Potter realness, super real, very real. Lots of magic. Reads a lot like the original books if it were from Hermione's perspective. Like it matched up quite well. Ron bashing, there wasn't much Ron bashing, which I appreciated. I don't love Ron bashing, okay. The two main characters' realness, very real. I liked both of them. Especially Draco, I liked. One of Hysterical's, like, fortes is writing action scenes. They're so good at writing action scenes. They're just emotional and dramatic and just, like, perfectly put together. So I actually really recommend this one. It was really, really a slow burn because it's not really about Dramione. I mean, there was a lot of Dramione scenes near the end, but in school and stuff, it was mostly just about, you know, it was just about Hermione. One downside to the kind of format that the author chose, which was, as I said, first part 6th year, second part 7th year, third part 8th year, and then 2 years out of school, was that the action-y, Voldemort-y, you know, like working for a cause together type of part was like before, it was like halfway through the book. So then there was a lot after that kind of felt like it was just like a little bit weird pacing in that sense, as far as like normally what kind of books and stories you're reading. But it was kind of, you know, like when you think like that's real life, you know. But when it came to reading, it was like by the time the end of the book was like right around the corner, I was thinking, like, I had almost forgotten about the Battle of Hogwarts. Like, it was so long ago. So that was one, I don't even want to say downside, because it was just the fact of the way that the story was written. But if you're interested in something very long that might take you a little while to get through, pick this one up. I love reading stuff that's kind of in the style of the original book, so it was just fun to read. Next, we have Secrets and Masks by Emerald Slytherin. This was completed in 2022. It is 454,000 words, and it's 75 chapters. So I was thinking, this is small potatoes compared to the other things that I've been reading. But 454,000 words, you know, just on its face that's not small potatoes, actually. Redemption arc is, he doesn't really have a redemption arc. Controversial, he doesn't really have a redemption arc, he's just anti-Voldemort, okay? And once again, I had a lot of things to say about this in my video, specifically about this. If you're interested in seeing spoilers, if you've read the book and you want to hear what I had to say and you want to comment and, you know, then go over there and do that. It was an interesting Draco that I haven't seen before. And also, there are some things I really, really liked about this story. Let me just get into it. Okay, so the background is that this is during the war, 9 years after the Battle of Hogwarts. But I mean, like, the war's still going on. Hermione is a lethal soldier in the Order, and Draco is like Voldemort's right-hand man. This was giving Manacled. This was giving something kind of between Manacled and the Auction. Rating was explicit. Big explicit. Big explicit. Patronus rating, none. So shocking. Wizarding World of Harry Potter realness, very real. Loved the realness. It was lots of magic. It felt very like, this is going to come back and bite me, because this happened in the last video too. But it felt like something that wouldn't be able to be reworked into a story. I think the two that I said that about on the original video, both of those have already been reworked into original stories. Not much Ron bashing. He's really overprotective of Hermione, which is kind of his prerogative. Like, that's his whole thing, you know? It's like, that's how it is in the original books too. It felt just kind of original to the stories in that sense. The two main characters' realness. Hermione's more cruel than she was in the original books, which I think that 9 Years of War would probably do that to you. And all of her, like, know-it-all, girl-next-door traits are totally gone. She thinks about, like, how to mutilate Draco and how to hurt him in very specific and violent ways a lot. And Draco does bear resemblance to the original. I'd say this Draco is most like Manacled Draco. But he's also, like, incredibly cruel and hardened. And he doesn't really have a moral compass, which I know you're thinking, Draco, moral compass? Not a necessity. But he doesn't have a moral system beside protecting the people he loves, which is that like the original Draco, I guess. It's just that, like, he has no line ever, which is kind of scary a little bit. Even more so than Manacled Draco. Manacled Draco was like, you kind of felt like he was like pushed into this position and he wasn't enjoying it. This one, you're like, I think he's kind of liking it. So trope wise, this is like a Draco owns Hermione type of story. She is stuck in his house, so it's really giving of the big two, and I liked the dynamic of that. However, they were unhealthy to each other. But I'll say this, there were some twists in this book. It was so worth the read. Like, it was really violent, and really, yeah, like when I say explicit, like in every single way. So if you have a hard time with that, you won't like it. But if you're fine with that, or you can get past or whatever, the twists, the plot, I mean, my jaw was on the floor like a couple of times. It just hit. So I was loving that aspect of it in a big way. Some of the torture I could have gone without. I thought it was way over the top. Also, the ending was, people who have read this before, I'm not saying anything. The ending was different, okay? It was different. Okay, next. The Fool, the Emperor, and the Hanged Man by Ian the Waiting. So there are warnings for this one. I mean, some of them have warnings, but I'm mentioning them on this one because they're very relevant. Graphic depictions of violence, major character death, rape / non-con. This was completed in 2023. It's 227,000 words, 28 chapters. Redemption arc, we don't really see it. He's already changed by the start of the book. She has to learn that he's changed. You know, that's how this kind of redemption arc works. But, you know, she doesn't know him anymore. So she really has to just, like, get to know him again. The background is that it's set 10 years after the Battle of Hogwarts. Very minimal rewrites. But there's some time play, which causes some little rewrites a little bit. But otherwise, no rewrites. And Draco and Hermione, like, they really don't know each other at the beginning. Like, they have not been knowing about each other for 10 years. 10 years. She lives in a secluded, like, she doesn't really want to be hanging out with other people. Like, she's like a hermit in a cottage in the Forbidden Forest, and Draco is a detective for the DMLE. The rating is explicit. This is first person POV from Hermione's perspective. Patronus rating, there is no Patronus rating, but there's something similar. The runes. If you know, you know. Wizarding World of Harry Potter realness, pretty real, but a lot of the magic-y stuff was like Celtic type of magic or like innate magic. Ron is not a huge character, but he's a very good character. It was a balm on my heart, okay? I'm not saying I love Ron, but I love to see an awesome Ron. Two mains realness, Hermione was super great. She was super great. She was very similar to book Hermione. Even though it's been 10 years, it just felt like, I was like, yeah, this is how somebody grows up. It was just her 10 years later. She was not a Mary Sue. She had all of the negative and kind of neutral traits that you would assign to her, including what are often considered negative traits that, like, are feminine. So I'm talking about, like, things that they get rid of when they want to make her, like, more cool, which is, like, crying a lot, being scared, stuff that is super normal, and that she is, you know, she has all of those traits in the original books too, and they didn't take those out, and I just love that. Like, I love that. Like, we're just reading about a girl, not just a girl, but the girl from the original books, and it was so nice. I loved, it was just very well done. Okay, Draco is fairly accurate, but he's pretty good, and I mean that, he's pretty good. But it's mostly in a believable way. There is, I'm going to say this, I'm not going to go into much detail, but there's a scene very early on in the book, about 7%, very graphic and very hard to read, and it was the scene, the non-con scene. Hermione was the victim of it. The guy was not Draco, so I'll say that, but it was somebody that we know very well. Really, really hard to read, and it was also mentioned multiple times after that too, so it wasn't just like it happened. It was like the linchpin for the whole story. It was a huge part of the plot, so just keep that in mind. take care of yourself. This is the summary that the author gives. 10 years after the fall of the Dark Lord, Hermione Granger leads a life of self-imposed obscurity. That is, until the day the headmistress Minerva McGonagall is murdered and a certain hero is responsible. And that didn't do justice to the gravity of the situation, the gravity of the plot. Very intense story, and it's very high stakes. And I think this is the first story I've read where I felt like, where it was not a Voldemort story, where I felt like the stakes were so high and Voldemort was not involved in any way. It was now in that sense I liked it. The person who was the antagonist in this story. Now, did I like him being the antagonist? Not really. Him? Not really. It made me sad. But it was very well done. Also, it's giving the bodyguard, okay? Because she actually lives in his apartment for a while because, and like kind of with his family a little bit, because she's in grave danger and he's like, a detective. So it was a nice change from the like Draco owns Hermione to the Draco is protecting Hermione, which sometimes it's both. But in this one, it was a Draco's protecting Hermione, and it was so well done. And it was like even though there was parts of this that were so hard to read and that were very heavy topics, it was a warm story. Okay, it was warm. The two of them, the way they fell in love. And his family, just learning about his family, knowing about his family. Lucius. I liked Lucius in this one. Was he accurate? Was he believable? I don't know, but I liked him, okay? Then there's a reveal at the end. There was a reveal at the end that just had me on my knees, tears streaming down my face. I want to cry just thinking about it. It was so good. Now, were there things that bothered me about this story? Were there things that just didn't seem like they were? Yes, but overall, this was... Oh, why am I crying about this? Next, Isolation. Isolation is by Bex Chan. This is a big one. This one is so popular. It was completed in 2020. It's completed. I only talk about completed ones. Words, it was 264,000 words. Not so long, am I right? This might be the shortest one so far. 49 chapters. The redemption arc, amazing. 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 It starts pretty much like the first day of 7th year, and there's no rewrites except, like before that, except that Snape takes Draco into hiding at the end of the 6th book, like after the Dumbledore thing, and he's in hiding with him all summer. That's the only thing that's changed before the beginning of this story. So before the beginning of 7th year, and the main plot of this is that Hermione, they're in like an apartment together, essentially, and like they're in a suite kind of in Hogwarts together. Not the most believable background really, or setup I should say, but the payoff was incredible. The rating is mature. Patronus rating, there's none. Wizarding World of Harry Potter realness, very real, but there was less magic than I'd like, especially considering that a lot of it was set at Hogwarts. In fact, he doesn't even have access to magic for at least half of the book, maybe more. Ron bashing, there was just a normal amount of Ron bashing, not too much, not too little. Two Mains realness, it was pretty good for both of them. Pretty accurate for both of them. So pretty much Draco is in hiding at Hogwarts, hiding from Voldemort. And he stays in a suite with Hermione because everywhere else he's likely to kill himself or get out. That was their reasoning, I suppose. They were stuck together in the room until 42%. Mostly that is like angsty, slow burny, fights, conversations, other things. Like watching his worldview change and his ideals change and his morals change. And it was really, really full and well written. Did feel a little bit like the isolation part of it was what the author really wanted to write, and the rest of it maybe the author was not so keen on writing. It wasn't as epic. Once they got out, it wasn't as epic as I was thinking it was going to be. But if you like that kind of slow burn, it's the two of them. It was kind of a turning on its head of a Draco owns Hermione. Of course, she didn't own him, but it did feel like, I mean, she was in control of his situation completely, pretty much, because he didn't have any magic at all. I mean, he was totally stuck there. Moving on to, this is the last one, From Wiltshire with Love. This was written by Mistress Lynn. It was completed in 2021, 352,755 words. The redemption arc, very full. Dare I say almost maybe too full. The actual change was very real, very cool to see. But then I did feel a little bit like it started to devolve into just like self-loathing. The background is it starts at the beginning of the 7th book and it diverges pretty quickly from there on. The rating is explicit. Patronus rating, it was pretty good, I suppose. She taught him how to make Patronus, and there was a whole scene about that. But otherwise, it didn't have any bearing on the two of them. You know, sometimes it's like it has something to do with it. It didn't really, just beside the fact that she taught him how to do it. Ron bashing, there was no Ron bashing, and Ron was pretty cool. Wizarding World of Harry Potter realness, it was pretty real. It was pretty real. There was, and you know, this is like Voldemort is the big bad guy, so it was a rewrite in that sense, and he was the antagonist, and it was nice to see that. The two mains realness, Hermione was pretty bamf, and he's like a Death Eater, loves his family, actually really believable until later. I just felt like their characters changed a lot over the course of the book. Hermione got very intense in her defense of him. It was kind of Mother Bear-y. And Draco got very murdery. So it was interesting how their characters changed. So notes from me to you. There are some pretty intense consent things going on in this book. So I guess read at your own discretion. I did talk about it more in my other video of it. However, that one does have spoilers. At its base, I liked this story. I liked the, he's a spy. That's happens early on in the book. He's a spy, and Hermione is his handler, and they meet a lot. They're kind of, you know, once it gets going, they're like in a secret relationship. Nobody really knows about them. But there is a lot of, like, as far as his redemption arc went, it was really good. I liked all the talks they had. I liked how his mind, his, like, opinions kind of shifted. I also liked that there was kind of the intense side to it, and that we got his, we get his POV too? Yeah, we get his POV too, and we're seeing him like going through a lot at his house. So Voldemort is there. He's having to do a lot of things he doesn't want to. He is a Death Eater. He is torturing people. He's killing people. And he is walking the walk. And then we're seeing him together with her, and him thinking about like how much he regrets the way that things have gone, and how much he wishes things were different. And just seeing that slow change in him, and also seeing him fall in love with her. That was really, really great. I liked that. But there was a subplot that I did not enjoy, which was kind of concerning these consent things, and kind of a darkness in Draco that wasn't really addressed. It wasn't really addressed in the way that I would have liked it to be. The purpose may have been for some of these scenes that were the two of them, and that were pretty explicit. In some senses, not so enjoyable to read. So, just, you know, read it with a grain of salt. Look into it a little bit first if you want to, if you're interested in reading it. All of these I have videos on with spoilers and everything if you want to read the book and then go watch those, or if you're not interested in reading the book but you want to know more about it, you can go watch those. This is just for kind of recommendations, and I love, love, love reading people's comments with recommendations or what they thought of each one of these. I mean, that's my main way of getting new fics to read, is through comments that people leave. I'm very happy to be back making a video. May was really crazy. I have 2 kids, and my oldest, this was his first year in school, and we also had an exchange student, and May is like I went to 3 graduations. I don't remember the last time I went to a graduation. And then like going away parties and end of year parties, and just I didn't even have time to think about books, much less making videos about them. So thanks for watching the video today. I'm really happy to kind of be back into it. I had probably the worst reading slump. I mean, it wasn't that long, but it was very intense. I didn't even want to think about books at all, and I kept like feeling guilty about not reading my books, but it's like, it doesn't really matter. I didn't have time, obviously, as well as I did not have the energy, so it wasn't that big of a deal, but it was like I was being guilty about it the whole time, and I feel like that makes reading slumps even worse. So I'm happy to be back in it. Let me know what you thought of these, if you've read them or if you're interested in reading any of them. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned for the next one.